In this, the final lesson of my quintessential Thanksgiving series, it's time for the big bird itself. Trigger warning, this bird starts out raw, so if you feel uncomfortable about that, you'd best buy a Tofurkey and click out of this video now. Actually, you know what's better than Tofurkey? Celebration roast. No, seriously. This isn't sponsored, I just really love celebration roast and turkey. Flexitarians for the win, right? Hi, I'm Tara, and this is Old Fashioned AF, where we take skills from the past and make them new, and I believe everyone should be able to roast a bird. The method I'm using is simple and can be adapted to any roast poultry. Chicken, game birds, you name it. But first, let's talk about why we shouldn't make a turkey for Thanksgiving and how that changed. For most of history, the United States turkey was not the main course in our Thanksgiving holiday. As late as 1897, Good Housekeeping's advice was to have at least 3 different types of pies at the Thanksgiving meal. A squash or a pumpkin pie, a fruit pie, and a mince pie, flanked by possibly a roast bird. But that roast bird didn't really come into play until the mid-1800s, because until then, turkeys were hard to come by outside of their native New England. So depending on where in the United States someone lived, their Thanksgiving could probably have varied widely between fish and meat pies if the family celebrated the holiday at all. Thanksgiving itself wasn't even declared a national holiday until 1863, and until that point it was pretty much down to each individual as to whether or not they celebrated it, though it was basically always popular in the New England region. Hopefully for obvious reasons, but just in case, here's a quick rundown. The settlers who came to Plymouth were kind of in a bad way. They had just arrived shy of winter in November of 1620, experienced an extremely harsh winter where almost half of the aforementioned settlers died, including over 2/3 of the women who had made the journey. And the 4 Puritan women who survived the experience of the first Thanksgiving in October 1621 probably just cooked a lot of venison the whole time, because all of the remaining Puritan men, plus the Wampanoag leaders who were in attendance, were busy memorializing the dead and bolstering relations between tribe and colony over a somber, if PR-focused 3 days. Think of the first Thanksgiving like you might a traders' convention, but maybe one with a little higher stakes. The first meal consisted mainly of the 5 deer that the Wampanoag brought, and various fruit and vegetable dishes indigenous to the New England area. Wild turkey was popular game at the time, and both before and after the Thanksgiving festival in 1621, there are accounts of turkeys being eaten. Slowly but surely, because of this documentation, which is unrelated to Thanksgiving itself, the turkey slowly crept into the vernacular of the Thanksgiving meal, and for that, I am certainly thankful. So how do I roast a turkey? It usually starts and ends with a very clean sink, but filming constraints kept me from showing you that this time around. So what I did instead is line my roasting pan with a new garbage bag straight out of the box, and I washed my hands with soap and then rinsed the bird in cold water before transferring it onto my new rack with handles. Thank you, patrons. This really did work really well. So if you have very little counter space like I do, it should be fine for you too, but I suggest you work in the sink if you can. It just creates less mess all around. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. Prepare your ingredients beforehand and keep them close while you work to decrease the chances of contamination. Thankfully, this is the easiest recipe ever, so you only need 3 more things: olive oil, salt, and pepper. This turkey came with a hock lock, and even though they're supposedly safe to roast in the bird, I cut it out because it makes it easier to ensure that I've removed everything from the turkey first, like the turkey neck. The giblets were removed when I rinsed the bird. Set these aside until the bird is in the oven. Separate the skin from the meat. Then drizzle the olive oil liberally all over and massage it into the skin and under the skin onto the meat underneath. Don't forget the inside of the cavity. Then repeat the process with the salt and the pepper. I crushed down some sea salt in a coffee grinder. It created smaller granules that were more likely to stick to the bird. Don't skimp on the ingredients though. This is time for coating, not just seasoning. If the skin rips as you work, don't worry. It'll still look lovely when it's cooked as long as you take the time to spread it back over the meat. When every part of the turkey and its insides are covered in olive oil, salt, and the pepper, it's time to roast. But be sure to remove the plastic bag underneath first if you decide to try this method of preparation at home. And when you're finished with the bag and the bird, please wash your hands and arms with soap so that you don't get your lovely guests sick afterward. Here's my personal rule of thumb for roasting the poultry. Every pound roast for 13 minutes. And the beauty of the modern era is that you don't need to do head math. It's honestly best to do this math before you thaw the turkey so that you know how much time you'll be taking up all of your oven space before you even begin. Once the turkey is in the oven, now it's time to start the gravy. Place the turkey neck and the giblets into a medium-sized pot and fill it with water to about an inch left on the top. Add an onion and some loosely chopped celery to the pot and bring this mixture to a boil. Once it starts to boil, reduce the heat to low and simmer the pot until the turkey is finished. While we're waiting on the turkey, let's all give thanks to my patrons at Old Fashioned AF, without whom none of these videos would take place. It's because of my patrons that I was able to buy a new roasting rack to begin with. So you have them to thank for the plastic bag preparation method that I came up with before. If you'd like to become a patron of Old Fashioned AF yourself, please visit patreon.com/oldfashioned_AF, which is listed in the description below. When the turkey is ready to come out of the oven, use a meat thermometer to check that it has cooked thoroughly to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees C in the meatiest part of the thigh. Then let it rest for about a half an hour, preferably in another dish, because in that time you can finish the gravy using its drippings. First, strain the turkey parts and vegetables out of the broth and set the broth aside. Keep the broth though, because it will help add flavor to the gravy. Dust the pan drippings with flour and whisk them together over the stovetop on medium-high heat until the mixture begins to bubble. It helps if you have a stainless steel roasting pan like this one, because you can use it to directly take heat on the burner. But if you don't, here's a tip for those of you who have made it this far into the video. Instead of warming up the roux in the roaster, simply scrape the drippings into the pot after the contents have been removed and dust them with the flour there instead. After the roux has been warmed, add in the meat from the neck and the giblets in little pieces. Then add the broth and whisk over medium heat until the gravy begins to set. If you like a smooth gravy, you can transfer the mixture back into the original pot and use an immersion blender to rid yourself of any lingering lumps of meat. Lawrence is a big fan of thinner gravy, so I try to stir it only until it just passes the spoon test, but the longer you stir, the thicker the gravy will get. When the gravy is ready, transfer it into a gravy boat and then serve. And there you have it, turkey and gravy, made from scratch by your very own hands. Your guests will be very impressed. The oil crisps the skin while the salt keeps the moisture inside the bird and the pepper adds that little kick. It's a simple but perfect combination that gives you gorgeous, dependable, and tasty results every single time. So, my dear viewer, what are you thankful for? Please let me know in the comments below. And bon appetit!